Hello and welcome back to the Oscar channel. Today's episode is on r/PettyRevenge, where OP gets a free upgrade to first class, thanks to loopholes. The first story is by user Top of the Morning. Neighbour took my parking spot after I shoveled. I poured water in his windshield. It was a cold winter day. 8 inches of snow had fallen the night before, and the wind chill made it feel as though it was negatives. I drive an all-wheel SUV, so I have no issues getting out. My wife, on the other hand, drives a Prius, which slides even in the smallest amount of moisture on the road. My car was down at the time, so we had to take my wife's car. I spent 45 minutes in the freezing cold shoveling that car out so that we could go to the store. We were gone for about an hour, and when we came back, our neighbour had taken the spot that I had shoveled. Our apartment complex doesn't have assigned parking, but in the winter it's understood that if you shovel a spot, it's yours. So when I saw his car in the spot I had just shoveled, I was pretty pissed. Well, I went inside and filled a 2-gallon jug of water, went back out and poured them on his windshield. Rinse and repeat. I must have poured about 10 gallons of water on his car. Being how cold it was freezing immediately at the touch of the windscreen. The next morning, I got to watch as he helplessly tried to scrape all these layers of ice off his windshield. Don't take my goddamn parking spot. Look, OP, if you spent 45 minutes in the negative degrees shoveling that spot's yours. Any decent human being would know that. And besides, pouring water on someone's car, that won't damage it. That's what happens when it rains in the cold anyway. So they better get used to it, especially if they're going to keep stealing people's parking spots. The next story is by some username 47. You don't like your boyfriend seeing me braless in the dorm? Then he won't. I live in a college dorm on an all-female floor. I usually wear a bra if leaving the dorm building, but I'm not going to put on a bra under my shirt just to walk down the hall to the bathroom. A few days ago, I left my room and walked 10 yards down the hall to the water fountain, refilled my water bottle, and went back to my room. I was wearing a white tank top with no bra. The tank top was fitted, but not see-through, so all you could see was the outline. There was a small group of people hanging out in the hall outside a few of the rooms, but I didn't think much of it until around an hour and a half later, when I got a knock on the door from one of the girls I'd seen in the hall. She said something to the effect of, "Hey, so sorry to ask you this, but if you go into the hall again, could you please put a bra on? My boyfriend's out there, and he was staring a little, so..." I'm super non-confrontational, so I was like, yeah, sure, sorry about that. And for the rest of that night, anytime I left my room, I put a bra or a sweater on. And that was the end of it, or so I thought. The next day, my roommate told me she'd overheard the girl telling a few of her friends about the incident while in the bathroom. She said the girl was making it sound like I had been purposefully trying to seduce her boyfriend, wearing basically nothing, taking my time at the water fountain, posing to push out my breasts, the whole works. When she left the bathroom, my roommate said the girl was actually acting it out at the water fountain, pretending to be me. That night, I passed the girl and some of her friends on my way to brush my teeth. I wasn't wearing a bra again, I was already in my pajamas. The girl looked, pointed at my chest, and all of them started giggling. But the last straw was when the entire dorm got an email from the RA yesterday, saying she'd gotten a few anonymous complaints about people dressing inappropriately in the hallways, and asking that we all just make sure that we're keeping things covered up. So here's where I got my petty little revenge. I knew the girl's boyfriend doesn't go to college here. The girl and I were in the same orientation group and had chatted a bit back then. I also knew that due to the pandemic, we aren't allowed to have non-student family guests in the dorms this year. So I used the same anonymous complaint form that she used to issue a complaint about me, to issue a complaint about supposed people bringing their off-campus boyfriends into our dorm and them not wearing masks. Masks are still mandatory in the hallways, although not frequently enforced. This morning, the RA emailed again, saying that due to an anonymous complaint, they'd be enforcing the no off-campus guests rule, and be checking IDs of unfamiliar guests to make sure they were students from then on. Really, this girl should be thanking me. If she was concerned about her boyfriend seeing the vague outline of my breasts in the dorm hallways, she no longer needs to worry, because he's not ever going to see them again. Honestly, OP, when I started reading this, I was fully convinced you were going to wear nothing but a bra to the water fountain on your next trip, and actually pose for the boyfriend, and make as big of a deal about it as you possibly could. The next story is by user Magnus40. Apparently booking a seat on a train is not a real booking if someone else decides to sit there first. I was travelling from Edinburgh to London by train, and had booked a window seat with a table. I got on the train to find 4 guys sitting at the table, and one in my seat that was clearly marked as booked. When I asked him to move, he refused, as he was with his friends and the train was packed. The ticket collector passed, and I asked him to help. He asked the guy to move, but he refused, and somehow that was that. "So what now?" I asked. "You can find another seat, but I have no power to move him. Only the police can move him, and they won't turn up just to move someone out of a seat." There were no seats free in the carriage, and probably not many free on the train, so standing to London was a possibility. I'm going to take a seat in first class. You know, better surroundings, power sockets, free tea and coffee. You can't sit there, you don't have a booking. Well, you could call the police to move me, but apparently they won't turn up just to move someone out of a seat. I've had a lovely trip tonight, with power for my laptop and a wide comfy seat. Well, OP, I guess if someone else is going to abuse the loophole and get your seat, you might as well abuse it and get a free upgrade to first class. Now, if this isn't petty revenge, I don't know what is. This has to be one of the pettiest things you could have done, but also one of the most brilliant. The next post is by the Toilet Destroyer. Entitled Parker parked in my driveway, so I blocked them in and got drunk all weekend. Friday night I came home from work to find someone on our block was having a large party, and someone decided they were entitled to park in my driveway. Keep in mind, my driveway is a single car length wide, lined with retaining wall on both sides, and a garage at the end, essentially impossible for a tow truck to come pull them out, without doing any property damage. Seeing this and the lack of street parking, I took this as a cue to park right behind them in my own driveway. Now a few hours go by, and their entitled Parker is now knocking at my door demanding I move my car, so she can leave. Seeing as they were demanding, I informed them that I'd been drinking and would not move my car. The entitled Parker then decides to call the police, and get them to force me to move. When the police knocked on my door, I was sure to grab a beer from the fridge before I answered to talk to the officer. I informed him that I had gotten home and I was unwinding and had been drinking and therefore was in no shape to drive. At this point, their hands were tied because they couldn't tow the car out. I'm in no shape to drive and I'm legally parked in my own driveway. I ended up telling the entitled Parker that since it's a long weekend, I would be on a week-long bender and they could come move their car after I go to work on Tuesday. Now, OP, I applaud your ingenuity. Like, you got there, he's in your car park, and you went, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to park him in. Screw that. I'm going to have a beer as well. Could you imagine the phone call this entitled Parker made to the cops? Hello, police? I trespassed on someone's private property by parking my vehicle in their driveway, and now they've parked behind me and they won't let me out? I'm the victim here. I demand you come and punish them. Great work, OP. The next story is by Earja. Total Wine would not sell me the specific wine I drove 60 miles to collect, just because they claim I was with someone else who left and they need ID for that person. I was alone, so I made a mobile order of 10k and never picked it up. I got mad all over again writing this because of the sheer amount of disrespect from Total Wine management, and I have the receipt for this order too. There's a specific wine I used to pair with food. The closest Total Wine that had it was a 60-mile drive, and it was storming out. I wanted it for the holidays because most likely I was going to be stuck inside. So I drive over. This used to be my typical Total Wine until I moved 2 counties away. Anyway, I go in and pick up the wine and get some other stuff for the holiday parties. I was in there for maybe an hour and it comes time to check out and the cashier asks for my ID, so I give it to her and then she tells me she needs to see the ID of the other person I was with. So now I'm confused and I say I'm alone. She says, well, I have to get the manager. Okay, fine. So he comes out to tell me that she told him I was with someone and they need to come back and bring their ID or they won't sell it to me. I told him I wasn't with anyone. He asks to see my ID, looks at it and says, well, unfortunately, you look young. At this point, I'm like, are you serious? And he's like, you can come back tomorrow alone. I find it extremely disrespectful to tell someone that they look young while you're holding their ID in your hand, and not to mention I've been shopping at this exact location for about 4 years and have never had a problem. So I told him about how I drove there and have been shopping there for years and that I even have a second form of ID, and he was just kind of giggling and saying no. So I left very angry. It was late, around 9 p.m, and then I had to drive about an hour and a half back in a rainstorm. So I was home, pissed about it all night long, and the next day I went into the one closer to my house to get the other stuff I was getting. Unfortunately, that one was out of the wine. That's why I didn't originally go there and I drove 60 miles away. They were pleasant as usual, actually beyond nice, and didn't even ID me, which just goes to show the other location was on some kind of power trip or something. Then I got an email for them to review my experience, which they send every time I go there, and I never do it, but I decided to select the location I had a bad experience at and give feedback on it. So I wrote exactly what happened, and then the next day I got a call from the store manager. Turns out that the guy who was on shift that night was an assistant manager or something. However, he was much more pleasant than the woman that called me. She was extremely rude and condescending and told me that she reviewed the cameras and that someone walked in with me at the same time and that made us a party. I told her that I didn't know them. She said it doesn't matter. So apparently people can walk into Total Wine at the same time as you and that means that you're a party? Then she said that the employees were watching me and that person left 30 minutes before I went to check out, and they saw it. Okay, so, also, if that is the case and that is your policy, why didn't you say something when you saw the person leave? And we could have cleared up the whole situation right then and there, instead of continuing to allow me to shop for another 30 minutes and waste my time. How come you didn't tell me then, instead of 30 minutes later when I came to check out, and you denied my ID? So I told her, even if that is the case, someone can't leave a store? And she said no. To complete the transaction, they would have to drive back with their ID. This made me extremely angry because even if that is the case, and that is your policy, at least you can offer an apology for the inconvenience or something like that, not just call me to argue and stir the pot. I was already kind of over it because it had been 2 days, but just her whole attitude and nastiness about the whole thing was really insult to injury. So I decided to look up their policy, and their policy clearly states that this only applies to parties at the checkout. So the rule is who you check out with is who is with you, and that makes far more sense, or is at least more understandable. Another policy I read, which was interesting, was that any online order not picked up within a week, they will issue a full refund to your original payment method. So my friends and I were sitting at home drinking the stuff I'd gotten at the other location later that day, and I'm telling them what happened, and they were all shocked. I used to work retail for a long time, specifically during COVID, and I knew what an inconvenience it is to set up a big curbside pickup order because they take up a lot of space on the order shelf. So drunk and mad, I decided to enforce their own policy on them and make a $10,000 order for the soonest possible pickup time, which they promise will be ready in 3 hours. So I made sure to order the cheapest, heaviest bottles I could think of so it can take up the most amount of space in their curbside pickup area, and made sure to only order like 1 or 2 of each, so they couldn't just give me a case, they had to get individual ones. And I ordered their whole supply of Tito's, since it's popular and it's the holidays and I know people are going to be looking for it. And this Total Wine has its curbside order section in the front behind a counter where you can see it. And I know that when customers saw it, they would ask for it, and then they would have to explain how someone ordered all 238 bottles, and they're back there on reserve. Then they'd probably get grouchy and ask for a manager. But the manager would be busy because I also made sure to order a lot of bottles behind glass, so they would have to run around with their keys scrambling to get this order ready. I worked retail, and I know how much stuff like this throws off a schedule and annoys the managers. So I loaded up the cart and stopped when I got bored, and I placed the order. I got the email confirmation which specified that you have to wait for the pickup confirmation email and that pickup times aren't guaranteed. So I thought for sure they were either going to cancel the order or call me or something. And something interesting that is sent with the email is a pickup policy that states specifically the recipient of the order needs to be 21. So you can have other people in the car that are not 21? Well, 5 hours later, I got the pickup email. It took them longer, but I was still surprised. Then later, I got a pickup reminder. Then 3 days later, a second reminder. Then 7 days, I got my final notice email. And then day 10, I got a phone call. It was the manager acting like a completely different person, this time asking when I was coming for the order. At this point, I think she knew I was messing with them, because it had been 10 days and she knew my name from the previous feedback thing, because when she called, she asked for me by name, and my name was on the order. So I told her, yeah, I went to pick it up, and was told I looked too young. So I went to the other Total Wine and picked up the same stuff there. So then she was mad and said, "Are you seriously not coming to pick this up?" Lol, restock. I just said nah. So she hung up. When your higher up asked you why your store had to refund someone $10,000, explain to them what you did. They were supposed to automatically cancel the order at the 7-day mark, but she didn't. She called me on the 10th day. So I called their customer service line to cancel it, and she told me the stores wait till the end of the month to do it. I'm assuming that the manager was trying to hold out on refunding till the end of the year to get a better number. Retail does that. I made them cancel it right then and there. Oh my gosh, OP, you really caused some strife there. I work in retail myself, and I would have hated you if I was one of the staff members. The sad thing is that the managers probably didn't have to deal with any of this, and it was just the poor staff members. You probably got 1 or 2 of them to quit, to be honest. That would have been how it worked at my store. I don't live anywhere near a Total Wine. In fact, I believe I'm in a completely different country. But what I've heard, Total Wine management are always on power trips, and I wouldn't trust any of them. The final story is by Revolutionary Ant. A stranger tells me to smile. It could be worse. Instantly regrets it. Last week, I was out and about, making a start on some errands I had. As I was walking, I was going through my long to-do list in my head. So I wasn't frowning, I wasn't smiling, my face was just neutral. A man starts heading towards me. As we pass, he tells me, "Smile, could be worse." I stop, stare at him for a moment, then say, "My parents were in an accident. My mum died on impact. We're turning off my dad's life support tomorrow." The guy looked like a robot suddenly being shut down. His face fell. He looked like a deer in headlights. He stuttered and stammered. He was obviously trying to think of something to say. When he couldn't, he turned around and speed walked away. My parents are both fine. There was no accident, but it annoys me when people think they have the right to dictate how people are feeling and what expressions they can make, especially when they don't know, or more particularly, don't care what's going on in their lives. It's unhelpful and patronizing. Imagine telling somebody who was just given a terminal diagnosis, "Smile, it could be worse," or someone who had lost a child, or had been laid off, or is otherwise struggling in a terrible situation. Honestly, OP, sometimes people just need to learn to mind their own business. Some people get in everybody else's business and they don't care what other people have going on. Anyway, guys, thank you for listening today. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. I'm doing 3 long-form videos a week and shorts every day. I'm going to slowly ramp up videos, but I'm going to be doing daily long-form videos by 1,000 subscribers. Anyway, guys, thank you, and see you next time. Catch ya.